Hi everyone, I wanted to record second grade math lesson 18 that we didn't get to last week. So what I'm going to do is share my screen so you can see what we are doing. All right, and let me make this a little bigger. All right, hopefully you can see that. So what we have here is pretty similar to what we did the day before. We are working with ones, tens, and hundreds. So the first thing I'm going to ask is that we mark all of our rectangles with the hundreds place, the tens place, and the ones place, so it's easier to identify. So go ahead and make your paper look like mine. And once you have that, we're going to take the first number here in letter A, which says 241. And so I'm going to write the number. The 2 goes in the hundreds place, the 4 goes in the tens place, and the 1 goes in the ones place. Now what I'm going to do, you can either draw the picture or you can use different colored construction paper, but we have here that we use in class, we have the ones, the blue ones, the purple tens, and the orange hundreds. So what I'm going to do is make my whiteboard marker look similar to this, so we are not distracted by the extra writing we have below on our paper. So I'm going to mark off my ones, tens, and hundreds, and I'm going to write the numbers. So 241, and scoot that up for you to see. So now these numbers are telling me how many of these markers are going to go into each column. So we're going to start in the ones place. It's telling me I have 1, 1. So I'm going to draw one circle and I'm going to write a 1 in there. So that way I remember that's my ones. My tens column this is telling me how many tens we have. So instead of 1 10, we have 4 tens. So I'm going to draw 4 circles. And in each circle, I'm going to write the number 10 so I don't confuse them with ones. And then I'm going to skip count by 10 to find out how many 4 tens makes. So 10, 20, 30, 40. And then my hundreds, I have 2. So I'm going to draw 2 circles, and I'm going to make them a little bigger because I write big. And I'm going to write 100 inside. So now I can count them. I can go 100 plus 100 is 200. So 200, 10, 20, 30, 40. So we can even write it like this. 200 plus 40 plus 1. So we wrote it in expanded form as well as drew a picture. So now I'm going to take my picture and copy it here. So I'm going to draw 2 hundreds and write the hundreds. And then I'm going to draw my 4 tens. And then I'm going to draw my 1, 1. Now this time I'm going to ask you to do something that we didn't do last week. I'm going to ask you to write it in expanded form, just like I did here. That way we get used to seeing it in expanded form. So we're going to count the hundreds again. 100, 200. So at the bottom of my rectangle, I'm going to write 200. And then on this thin line right here, I'm going to write a plus sign so that I remember I'm adding the 200 to what I have in my tens. Now I'm going to skip count my tens. 10, 20, 30, 40. We have 40 in the tens place. And then we put another addition sign in between the tens and the ones. And we have 1, 1. So if I wanted to stretch out 241, this is what it looks like in expanded form. Expanded form. Let's try letter B. We have 412. So let's write 400 at the top, the 4, the 1, and the 2. So the 4 is in the hundreds place, the 1 is in the tens place, and the 1 is in the tens place, and the 2 is in the ones place. I think I got that right. All right. I'm going to do the same thing here, just so it's bigger for everybody to see, which I think is important. All right. And let's see what our number is. 412. So 412. All right. My ones place. This is telling us we have 2 ones. So I'm going to draw my 2 ones. And I know some of you are going to say, ooh, they look like eyes. Yes, they look like eyes. All right, our tens place, I have 110, so I'm going to make my 110. And we have 4 hundreds. So let's draw 4 hundreds and make sure you mark, you identify or label what you just drew. All right. So now I'm going to take what's on my whiteboard, if you're using your whiteboard, and transfer it to letter B. If you're just doing it in letter B, you are 1 step ahead of me. So I'm going to ask you to try to write it in expanded form. Let's see if you can do it without my help. And then you can check your answer with my answer. All right. So let's count how many hundreds we have. 100, 200, 300, 400. So at the bottom of your rectangle, just like in letter A, write 400. Stretch it out. And then our plus sign, plus what? 10. So let's make your 10. And then another plus sign. That way we know we're adding these together instead of subtracting and taking them apart. I have 2 ones. So now we have an expanded form. 400 plus 10 plus 2 equals 412. And we don't say 412. We say 412. All right, let's try the next one. I'm going to do this one in my rectangle instead of on the whiteboard. So the number we have here is 124. So I wrote my numbers. I divided them up into their place value. So the 1 is in the hundreds, the 10 is in the 2 is in the tens, and the 4 is in the ones. I'm going to start with, let's start with the ones, because if we have extra ones, we kind of need to regroup. So today we'll start with the 4, with our ones. So I'm going to draw my 4 ones. And then now I'm going to draw my 2 10s, and I'm sure you're already done because usually you beat me. And then our 1 in the hundreds place. And then go ahead and write it again in expanded form. So we have 100. And then 2 10s equals what? 10, 20. So we're going to write 20. So we have 100 plus 20 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. So 100 plus 20 plus 4. Go ahead and give that a shot. Does yours look like mine? All right, letter D. Order the numbers from least to greatest. Least means smallest, greatest means biggest. And the way we're going to look at these numbers up here, I'm going to circle them, and I'm going to ask you to circle them also. So that's the only place you're looking. We're going to start with the smallest number, least. Least is going to be here. I'm going to put an L underneath the first line and a G underneath the last line. So least goes first, greatest goes last. Now, in this case, we are going to look at our hundreds place, and I'm going to highlight mine so it's easier for you to see. So which number is the smallest? I have a 200 here, I have 400 here, and I have 100 here. 100 is the smallest. So we're going to write the whole number, 124. Now I'm going to look to see which number is the greatest. And greatest is bigger, so I already used this one. I'm going to cross it out so I don't get confused again. Now I'm going to look at 241 and 412. Look in your hundreds place, which is bigger, 2 or 4, which is the biggest number? The 4 is the biggest. I want to eat 400 gummy bears instead of 200 gummy bears. So where the G is, we're going to write 412. And then I'm going to cross that one out because I already used it. Our next number that we didn't use goes on the line that we didn't use. So we have 241. Give that a shot. Try to catch up. All right, just making sure that this is still recording. All right, okay. So hopefully you're all caught up there. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to help you out, okay? So for here, for number 2, it says order from least to greatest in standard form. These are standard form. Remember, down here, expanded form. So we're going from least to greatest. So I want you to do an L and a G underneath, okay? Same thing here, least to greatest and least to greatest. All right. Now, I'm going to give you some hints. We have 537, 263, 912. You're going to look at the hundreds place to fill in those numbers. Okay, the smallest number is going to go here. The biggest in the hundreds, you're doing the hundreds. I'll get you started. So the smallest number, which is it? 5, 2, or 9? If you said 2, you are correct. So we're going to write the number 263. And I'm going to cross it out. And I'm going to save the next 2 for you. Going to help you with letter B. Now we have the number written in word form. It says 230. Because looking at all those words and the words and the letters is a little overwhelming when we see numbers. So let's write the number. I'm going to cross it out and write the number 230 on top. That way I can quickly look at the numbers instead of reading the words and trying to look at numbers. So we have 230, 213, and 2 tens and 3 ones. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm sorry, 20 tens, oh my goodness, and 3 ones. So I'm going to show you my handy dandy whiteboard. So again, and hopefully you caught my mistake in that last number. So we have 20 tens and 3 ones. So 20 tens and 3 ones. Watch what happens. The 2 automatically moves here and goes away. So it becomes 203. You can even break it up into hundreds and tens. It's kind of like a magic trick. So our number changes to 2, Miss Wall, 103. Okay, so we have the number 230, 213, and 203. They're trying to trick you, so listen carefully. I'm highlighting my hundreds. And if you see, they're all 2. They're the same. If they're the same, you need to move to the next place value, which is going to be our tens. Now I'm going to highlight it a different color so we can see the difference. Okay, so we know that our hundreds are all the same. They're 2. So we're not going to use that to find our answer. We're looking at the tens and we want the least, so the smallest number. So here we have a 3, we have a 1, and we have a 0. So 0 is smaller than 1, and it is smaller than 3. So our number that is the least or smallest is 203. So on this line, the first line for the least, please write 203. And then you can cross that out. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to find out what our middle number is next. I'm going to look. I have a 1, and then I have a 3. Or if you start from left to right, you have a 3 and a 1. So which number comes after 0? If I'm counting, it's the number 1. So our next number is going to be 213. So I'm going to write 213 on my middle line. So the number in the middle is 213. And then once again, I'm going to cross it out so I do not get confused. And the remaining number is 230. And I'm going to write 230. Okay. Let me scoot this up. There we go. All right. Now for letter C, this is an expanded form. All right. So what you want to do is you're just using the first number, and I circled it. That's what our number is going to look like. We have 400 plus 80 plus 5. So I'm going to write the number 485. I'm mushing it together. I'm taking away those zeros and I'm mushing it together. Okay. And the second number, we have the number 4 plus the 800 plus 50. Now they scrambled or mixed up the numbers, but again, we're going to start with the biggest number. Okay, so let's circle those numbers, not the zeros. And which is bigger? Here's our ones, our hundreds, and our tens. Our hundreds are going to go first. So the 8 goes first because 800 is the biggest. And then we jump over to our tens. And in our tens, we have 5 tens, which make 50. And then we have 4 ones, which makes 50 into 54. So we have 485, and then we have 854. And then last but not least, we have 845. So I'm going to ask you to put those in order from least to greatest. You're going to do that one by yourself. So go ahead and pause the video and try to do those by yourself. Okay, 3 more and then we're all done. Now we're going to go from the greatest to least. So under our lines where we're writing our answer, you're going to put a G for greatest at the first line and an L for least at the last line. And do the same thing for the next 2 questions, please. All right. So here for letter A, we have 11 ones and 3 hundreds. I'm going to write that in standard form, okay? So we want to start with the hundreds. Our hundreds is 3. So I'm going to write a 3, cross out the 300s, and I have 11 ones. So next to my 3, I'm going to write the number 11. What number did we come up with? 311, right? And then here we have what number? 311. And here, let's see what we have in expanded form. We have 10 plus 1 plus 300. So let's mush them together, starting with the hundreds. So for the hundreds, we have 300. I'm circling my 3. See how I did that? And then I'm going to go to the tens. I'm circling the number in my 10 that is not a 0, and that is a 1. I'm going to write it next to my 3. And now I'm going to circle the number in our ones place, and that's a 1. So let's see what numbers we have. We have 311, 311, and 311. We're going to write that from greatest to least. So I don't know about you, but I think 311 is greatest. And then I think I'll cross out the first one. And then we have 311 again. So I'm going to write that again and cross out the next 311. And we have one more, 311. Now I want you to take a look. Look at these numbers that we wrote. 311, 311, 311. Those are the same. And remember in math, when they're the same, they're called equal. So in between where the commas are, I'm going to put equals because one isn't greater and one isn't less. They're the same. So I'm going to put equal just because I want to remember that when they're the same, in math, they're called equal. All right, so let's get started on letter B for number 3. So we have 7 ones, 9 hundreds. So to help me with my math, I'm going to make the hundreds, my tens, and my ones because I don't have any tens. So I have 9 hundreds. In the hundreds place, I'm going to write a 9. In the ones place, I'm going to put a 7. And when our place value is empty, what do we stick there so we know nothing goes there? A big 0. So that number reads 907. All right. And I'm going to cross that out because I see too many words coming up. In the next part, we have 79 tens plus 10 tens. So since we're working with tens, I'm going to add them together. So what is 79 plus 10? 9 plus 0 is 9. 7 plus 1 is 8. So we have 89 tens. Huh? 89 tens, Miss Wall. I don't get it. Now we're going to split it up into hundreds, tens. Hopefully you can see that. We have 8 hundreds, 9 tens, and 0 ones. So we now have the number 890. Okay? And the last number, 970. Oh boy, my brain's starting to hurt. Okay, let's look at the hundreds place first. All right, so I'm going to highlight it. You can circle it. You can use a crayon and write over it. So we are going, remember, we're going from greatest, the biggest, to the least, to the smallest. So the biggest to the smallest. So we have a 9 in the hundreds place. We have an 8 in the hundreds place and another 9 in the hundreds place. So we're going to be looking at these two numbers with the 9s. So now I'm going over to the tens place and I'm going to make my tens in those two numbers pink. Okay, now I have a 9 and a 0, and here I have a 9 and a 7. Which is greatest, 0 or 7? Hopefully you said 7. So our first number is going to be 970, and then I'm going to cross that out. And what number do you think comes next? Well, let's look at our hundreds again. We have a 9 and an 8. Which number is greatest, 9 or 8? 9. So our number 907 is going to be next. It is the next greatest number. And last but not least, we have 890. All right. Last one, and I'm going to help you get there. So we have let's go back, Miss Wall, 15 ones and 4 hundreds. So I'm going to make my place value chart because I think it's going to help with this number. And you can do this with all of them. So I'm going to start with the hundreds. We have 4 hundredths, and then 15. If I put 15 in here, it's too many. So we're splitting up our 15. The 1 is going to move on up into the tens place. So we're not counting 15 little ones. So our number is now 415. I'm going to cross that out. I have 154. And we're going to circle our numbers that are not 0 in the next expanded form equation. So we have 50 plus 1 plus 4. I'm sorry, plus 400. 50 plus 1 plus 400. We're starting with the hundreds. What do we have? We have a 4. So we'll write 400. How many 5s? I'm sorry, how many 10s do we have? 5 tens. And how many 1s? 1. All right. So your numbers are 415, 154, or 451. I'm going to ask you to do this one by yourself. Remember, start in the hundreds place. If they're the same, move over to the tens place. And then that will help you see which number is greatest and going to go there. Okay? Hopefully that helped you. If you have any questions, you know where you can find me.